Hi, CB Lee. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And for those who are not familiar with CB Lee's work, they are the acclaimed author of the series Not Your Sidekick, which was actually how I met you, which is I freaking love that series. I can't get enough of it, and
Oh,
I
thank you.
introduce so many kids to it even still today. A Clash of Steel, a Treasure Island remix, the Ben 10 graphic novels, out now, Queer We Go Again, and from a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back, as well as their latest upcoming novel, Coffee Shop in an Alternative Universe, which comes out in June of 2025. Um, Speaking of your latest book, Coffee Shop in an Alternative Universe, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's about two girls, Brenda and Kat, who meet each other. It's a meet cute in a coffee shop, and then sparks fly. They're very excited. They set up a date. Then, when they both arrive at the date, they both think that the other girl has stood them up. And what actually happened is that they both live in two different universes, and they just happen to be in, the right moment, the right time when their universes met. And so the story follows these two girls as they try to continue to date and also save the world because the collision of the universes is causing all this interdimensional drama.
Oh my
So
God, that's so cute.
yeah, it's coffee, it's flirty, it's fluffy, and also like I want to say just like adventure fantasy shenanigans. And like if you like D&D, Brenda's a D&D nerd, so there's a lot of like real magic meets nerddom. And I'm excited about it. I hope people are excited about it too and enjoy it.
I mean, honestly, as a also a D&D nerd, I am very excited about it. I have my probably reading about dragons sweater on
Amazing.
right now. Um, so where did you get the idea for this book?
So I'm in love with the idea of liminal spaces. It actually came to me in a Target. So there's a scene in Target in the novel because my conception of Targets is that it's a place where time and space seem to not exist because every Target looks like every other Target. And you can walk in one door and not know where the exit is. And I love like all of their like kitschy like decor, and you can, you go in to buy socks and then you end up with like a bunch of stuff. Um, I mean, this is, the department stores all have this sense of feeling with, it's not unique to Target, but it happens to be, the liminal space of like airport lounges and gas station exits. Like there's a certain romantic feel to them that
Mhm.
I love. And I thought about like, what if there was a meet cute between two characters who weren't from the same place? And I thought about like an alternate universe that was like much like ours, but just a little different. And maybe that difference is magic. So one world is a fantasy world where there is magic, and then one world's very much like ours, where people play D&D and cosplay characters who can do magic. So if these two worlds meet, like how does that translate to like with like accidental clashes? Like a dragon shows up in LA and like Wi-Fi signals are wreaking havoc on spells in the other
Mhm.
universe and like all these shenanigans. But the idea really was at the core of it was like I wanted to write a fluffy romance that started in a coffee shop. Like I love coffee shop AUs as a fandom nerd at heart. It's one of my favorite tropes. And I think just the joy of seeing two characters fall in love in a coffee shop and getting to, you know, have that like domesticity slash like, you know, it's just cute. It warms my heart.
I honestly think this is a story, and I told you earlier that I think a lot of people are really going to love and kind of be called to, especially in the times we're living in now. I think so many people have, especially with the pepperoni that we all got out of in 2020, that we're kind of still living in now. Um, a lot of people found D&D, found solace in coffee shops, and with you bringing the multiverse of madness. Um, you've kind of like just meshed all of those into one into this like just perfect little fluffy book, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm excited. There is one of my favorite scenes that I had envisioned from the very start of the book. So the dragon that ends up in Los Angeles, one of the main characters has a cat, And so they're like, how do we take care of this dragon? She's lost, she's confused. And so the dragon and the cat switch sizes, which is how they deal with it. So then you have this giant appa-sized cat roaming the streets of LA. You solved one problem and created another, but it's okay.
It's usually how it goes, though. You're like, look, I did it, but
Yeah. So the two creatures on the front cover, where you see the dragon and the cat, they're currently both cat sized.
mhm.
It's just the teaser of what's to come. But you're the first to know this is what's going to happen. There's going to be a giant cat.
It's going to be a massive cat. I mean, I think that's a lot of people's dream, though.
Yes.
An apple-sized cat.
Yeah.
They're like, yes, give. But I mean, we're talking about D&D now too, so I gotta know, what's your go-to class and race?
I currently play a rogue tiefling, but our last campaign was like pirate themed. This is my fault because our DM was like, "Hey, what should the theme be?" And like I was blanking because I was like, I just come from writing all about pirates, so I was like pirates. And then he was like, "Okay, like I'll write this campaign. It's gonna be fantasy magic pirates." I'm like, "Okay, sure." And the vibe of some games where it's like, is it going to be like I'm going to have a very classic character with like drama and blah, blah. And I was like, actually, I want my character to be a pirate accountant. He's going to be the guy that kept all the books for all of the big pirate gangs. And my friends kind of, we all came up with these, like, it was a combination of people who are like, oh yes, this is a very serious story and campaign. And then some people were like, oh, here's my barbarians collecting hamsters. The hamsters were the crew of one of our ships. And so we were saving them. So like her character was this like huge barbarian and we're like, okay, pick up as many hamsters as you can and save them. What was the question again about I'm just talking about our campaign now. Oh,
No,
whoa,
it
what
was just it was,
um, I usually play rogues and I did play a bard once because I thought it would be fun.
Mhm.
But I'm as a writer, I have the benefit of editing, and in improv, I am not great. It's really hard for me to like think of like role playing in the moment
Mhm.
because other people are great at it. I'm not one of them. So when people like the first time I played a bard, I'm like, cool. And then my character will flirt past the guard and they're like, okay, do it. And I'm like, what? I can't, I don't know how to do it. I can't.
What do you mean flirt in real life? How do? I can flirt on paper because I can edit what I say.
But yeah, I love D&D. It is fun because like Brenda's friends are all in a party together.
Mhm.
And when they learn about magic, one of the interesting things that I did with the world building of the novel is that like um, anyone can do spells. Like it's not like people have an inherent gift or not. It's just
Cool.
you can learn. Basically, magic is like math. If you're taking an algebra class in high school, you're like, when would I ever need to do this? So people in Cat's world are like, magic is a convenience. Most people don't cast spells or consider themselves mages because they're like, whatever. And I could they have rune books instead of phones. So like you hold your rune book and it would just like levitate something for you because you just programmed it to someone else wrote the programming and it's fine. You don't need to know how it works. You need to do it yourself. And so all of Brenda's friends are like, what? No, it's so cool. I want to learn how to do it. And so what actually happens is that like as um, mana and energy from Cat's world flows into Brenda's, they
Mhm.
realize that they can cast spells and it's about intention. So like if you literally point at someone and say like I cast shield, if you have enough conviction and there's like power around you, you could cast it. So all the D&D nerds end up like saving the day and stuff. I'm not
That's,
spoiling too much of the book, I hope, but I hope that it makes people
I
want to.
mean, a, you're giving us just enough. Just enough. We'll keep some things a mystery.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, like you don't know how the romance is going to work out.
Yeah, you don't know. They might not end up together. It's fine. with that note, we won't spoil too much more, but again, that comes out June of 2025. I didn't the specific date is June. Oh God, I don't have it. June 10th. Yeah, 10th. Aha, we got it. We got there. Um, but another phenomenal book that you wrote is A Clash of Steel, which launched Macmillan's groundbreaking remix series. Um, how was writing that? Because it was their Treasure Island remix, and that was what, 2, 3 years ago?
Mhm. Yeah, it was such an honor to be asked. And when I think about classics and their place in like just kind of like our world and cultural um, perspectives, I think a lot of the things people are reading when they're kids and what are told, hey, these are the classics, they're not representative of the experiences of the people or even just like the world, right? Like, why is this considered a classic? Why is this book the gravitas of
Mhm.
like what is created and inspired people and stories like, and thinking of Treasure Island, like the most successful pirate has been Journey Sao. She lived and conquered and died of old age. Like there's she literally um like the British government, the Portuguese government, the Chinese government, like they waged war against her and her like, hundreds and thousands of pirate troops, and like they couldn't stop her. And then finally they're like, okay, what do you want? And she's like, okay, I'm gonna retire, leave me alone. I'm gonna take all these ships and just open up a gambling house and retire and live happily ever after. And she like had her kids and she had a she continued to run like her underworld. But the whole like living to old age was such a badass. Like her story is so epic to me, and yet I didn't learn about her until like I was in college and just like searching and finding. And so like we as children are like, oh, Blackbeard and like household names. Like when you think about pirates, like no one
Mhm.
knows about her unless you're looking for information about her. And like, look, she literally blows Blackbeard off the water. He had like hundreds maybe of pirates, and Zhang Yishao had like, I have the numbers in the book, but like I should just memorize them. But her empire was so vast that it was like completely dwarfs him in terms of like success and power and reach. But we learn about Blackbeard, and we know that Treasure Island and this story because it is a classic. And so what the remix classics are doing is bringing marginalized authors to tell stories that people are, or at least stories that are inspired by classics that people are familiar with, but telling them from, hey, like what would this look like, and it's different for every story, right? Like in Clash of Steel, I didn't do like a parallel, like this kid is Jim, this kid is like,
Mhm.
so and so, and this kid, or this person is Long Darn Silver. I wanted to just do a complete, like, all right, great. There's a map, there's a treasure, there's because it's Zheng Sao as the main, like it's her treasure. So I completely did a rehaul of like, it's gonna be a very historical novel. I'm gonna do a ton of research into like this golden age of piracy and how did these forces came to be and what led to pirates gaining so much power in the first place. I'm like, all right, it starts with this war in Vietnam and it starts with this conflict in China and how these, the Navy had to contract these other pirates and they just, and like, the power struggle between all these different pirate gangs, and that in itself
Yeah.
is fascinating, right? How she was like, actually I can like unify all of you and we can be this like confederation of pirates. But yeah, I think it's vitally important that like works um by like authors of color that showcase like, hey, like this is a beautiful story that's about like someone from your history, right? So I think remix classes is saying like, hey, I see you. Your history is important. Your people are important, and you deserve to be valued as a classic.
Yep.
And so where I'm coming from writing is that, Clash of Steel is that I hope people see it as like a lovely adventure story. And also it's a very queer story that like queer people have existed in, and especially in historical fiction, I think there's like a sense of like erasure where people are like, oh, queer people were invented when Stonewall happened. And we're like, no, that's not true.
Mm,
So like seeing a queer person exist in a historical concept in a historical time is really empowering, I think, right? Because when you see yourself in the past and you're like, hey, I'm not alone. People have always felt this way. Maybe they didn't have the same words, but like, hey, this person could have been trans. Like it felt like they were trans. Maybe they didn't have the like, same language we do, but like, or like this person, if they were alive today, probably would have identified as non-binary, right? Or like this person clearly married their, as a spouse because they, and all the things were like, and they lived together and they were life partners, and this was her
yeah.
very close friend, and like, okay.
Her very close friend who lived together happily for 40 years. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about like Emily Settle, my editor, did a wonderful job with all of these books, and I know they're still like I haven't had the opportunity to read all of them, but I know like after like we did, Bethany Morrell's So Many Beginnings is so lovely. I love that book.
Yeah.
You have Amina May Safi, you have Anna Maria McLemore, you have so many amazing people writing books in this series. So I'm excited to see like more, like, as people unpack and remix all these things. And I love the like remix part too, because it's not just like, it's not a retelling. It's like,
Hmm.
I'm remixing it. I'm telling my own story, but with the like, I guess the foot in the door is like, people are like, oh, what's it about? You're like, okay, it's not a, it's a take on Treasure Island.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think I've read about half of them. Um, and they're all so powerful in their own right because they are mirrors of our society today when, so many people couldn't and have a voice like, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago when these classics were being written. And that's what I love about everyone being able to tell these stories with new boy. Like it's breathing new life into these stories. And honestly, they're better.
I love like So Many Beginnings is so beautiful, and my whole big thing with like Little Women, that's such a like revered classic, and it's beautiful because it's this like family story, but it's also set during the Civil War, and
Hmm.
it's set during this time period that's like rife with like I'm like the there aren't any black people in the story, and
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense for this story to exist during this time where it does. And
Hmm.
Bethany did just like I loved it so much because it's just it gives you those family feels of these sisters, and also like what they're going through, and like the revelation of like I didn't know that there was like an entire settlement of free people.
Hmm.
And there was, and I think Bethany doing research was like, everyone who's done work in this series I think has put in the work to like take the like not just the time period but also, I don't want to say it's updating it because it's like, oh, hey, like it's like unearthing it, right? Like this existed during that time. You just don't know about it. Like
Yeah,
the.
completely. I I told you like as I work at a bookstore and I always bring like young readers over because we have like a YA series section and that's where we house all of those books and I'm like if they're like oh I have to read The Great Gatsby, Treasure Island, Jekyll and Hyde, X, Y, or Z, Robin Hood for, school this year. I'm like, and they're like, my kid's struggling. I'm like, why don't you try reading this? I'm like, this is the bare bones of the story, but I'm like, it's better. I'm like, it'll help your kid. I'm like, it'll help you. You can tell, or I'm like, you can read this and it'll help them get into it. I'm like, it's a
Mhm.
story that like is closer to home with kids these days, with anyone these days, in all honesty. And so that's what I tell a lot of parents and a lot of kids who are struggling with reading classics.
Mhm. Yeah, it's my dream that like my work is reaches the readers who need it. And I was really honored when there was an eighth grade teacher who did a fundraiser in LA to raise money to buy entire classroom sets. So she did. She was able to raise enough money for her campaign. She bought a classroom set of Brandon Huang's books, and also she did a Clash of Steel. And I
Mhm.
donated like a bunch of copies of Not Your Sidekick as well. So like the idea that some like these kids are reading it as part of the curriculum is wonderful.
Mhm.
I also developed a bunch of like discussion questions in in Clash of Steel that's available for people who are like, hey, like if you want to do some like thoughtful, work, or if you're a teacher, I think my my dream was like I'm going to write all these resources for teachers who want to teach it. But time is pretty. Um, if I had all the time in the world, I would love to do it. Like I wanted to do
Mhm.
it for Minecraft and like create like little exercises for people to like if you're teaching my book or if you want to create a module to teach people and then have them play Minecraft and do a thing that's like educational and fun. I would definitely love to write an exercise for you. But there are the discussion questions which exist. And there's a note at the end of Clash of Steel that's like, for more resources, visit CB Lee's website, which is great, except I never had the time to put the content up because when we were, I basically wrote an academic paper about Zheng Sao and like her like
Mhm.
rise to power and who she was and all this other stuff. And it was like 50 pages. And
It's amazing.
I was like, hi, Emily. I wrote an author's note. Here it is. and
The scroll. Here's my note. Here's my author's note.
and she was really lovely. I adore her. And I had to edit it down. So what you do see in the book is a very condensed version about like her life, right? So like you
Mhm.
read the novel and I'm like, okay, this is more about her and her actual life and what happened. But I was like, oh, okay, I should like write this and publish it and put it on my site so people have the full story because I did put the work into it. So that's kind of a goal of mine to have more content that people can use or share, or just people who are interested, like, hey, I want to read more about her.
That is honestly amazing because I think so many badass women throughout history get their stories erased by the cishet white men.
There's the like rejected princesses books, which is
Mhm.
interesting. Like they're great, but they also because it's like a compilation of like so many women, each woman gets like a page, right? So,
Mhm.
that's a fun book to have for kids in
Yeah.
general. Um, but also like if you want like all when I was doing research for this book, almost everything was about her was in academic journals. Like I got a couple books that were about the time period and about like piracy during that time. But a lot of them were like, huge like academic analyses of the wars that were happening during that time.
Mhm.
But yeah, the recommended reading parts is part of the like fun that I have putting into all of my grades. I even included recommended reading into coffee shop because like some of it's just about like it's set in modern day LA, but you have all this fantasy stuff and I also have like Kat's family has been here since the time of like the gold rush and the
Mhm.
so I have a little bit about like Chinese immigrant culture during that time and then obviously a little bit about like Vietnamese immigrant culture because Brenda's Vietnamese and so having like additional reading is fun for I think just people who want to learn.
I think you are absolutely correct on that, honestly. And I think more people should be doing that because I'm kind of going to pivot this. This question isn't in here. Want to talk about media literacy for a second?
Okay, sure, sure.
I think it's becoming harder for kids to recognize literacy, like media literacy, because they're not being taught the way that maybe you or I were taught. And by you providing these types of resources and external reading, like you read a book and you're not getting maybe what you or I are getting from it. And by providing these external resources, maybe they can.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm not sure what people are doing now. I feel like teachers do so much, right? Like, hats off to every single
Absolutely.
teacher that is like doing their best during this time to with like the resources they have and administrations. I taught fifth grade for like two
Yeah,
years. And so it was um it was a yeah, I think the media literacy question is great because it's interesting what the consumption of media has changed and how it's been absorbed. So like, and just what's available, right? Because so many if you're looking at like legitimate press sources that are doing actual journalism that's like unbiased or investigative, right? Those platforms have subscription fees, right? Or they're behind a paywall, and like people are not willing or able to pay that, right? Even if it's like $1 a month, right? And like keeping up a subscription is hard, and like people are like, oh yeah, I will get my news from this source or whatever because it just showed up and it's free. And so you get a lot of media bias, you get a lot of like media from sources that are essentially clickbait for other stuff or trying to sell you something. But the way news is presented is part of our country. It's um part of the society that we live in. It reflects the present ideologies of whoever owns the media company. And literacy, I definitely encourage it and want people to try to develop that critical thinking um, about all of that, and maybe also to see outside your bubble, right? Because when you're like, oh, everyone's talking about this, but it's like, oh, my algorithm of what I see on socials is this like circle of like I'm seeing the same things in my
You're
hashtag,
caught
right?
in your echo chamber.
Yeah, and so the the encouragement that I have is just for people to broaden their horizons and get media from different places and to be critical of all of it and just take
Mhm.
everything with a grain of salt and also do extra research. And I know that it's an extra layer of work too to see if you're like, oh, verify if this happened or this happened, and anything, Twitter shots can be um fake. Screenshots are not necessarily a legitimate source, right?
Mhm.
And anything can, there's all this weird AI stuff that like people can deep fake, you know, celebrities or political people to say things that are not true.
Yeah. And I think that's, as I'm kind of wrapping it back around, I think what is fantastic about your work is that you are providing that for readers right now. You're providing that extra step. Like some people can be like, well, I don't want to put in the work, and sometimes like it may, whether it be like, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, effort, X, Y, or Z, you're doing that and having that in your work for them and showing saying, hey, just go here and you can find out like whether it is Chinese immigrants into America, extra history, um, everything else in your work. Like you're a fantastic author for doing that, honestly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing what I can and also like encouraging people, but I'm also not judging or putting pressure on like if you don't have the capacity. I know everyone's time is limited, and like obviously first take care of yourself in this climate where a lot of news is very stressful and a lot of I think it's very easy to burn out on negative things that are happening. And so if you need to like turn off everything and not focus on anything and just be like, oh, coffee shop, it's cute, it's fun, I'm going to read like 500 different coffee shop AUs of my favorite character, like do that. It's fun. And like if that is something that I have done actually to cope with a lot of like trauma and all this other stuff where and just like reacting to I think this was during the first Trump presidency. So like that era, I read a lot of work that was just like, I just want to read joyful things. And it was hard, I think, as an author because in 2016 was when Not Your Sidekick came out. And a lot of the reactions around it were like people were like, oh, it's so timely, it's so great, it's exciting that like you're putting attention to like, these kids, these queer kids are fighting against this corrupt government. And I was like, I was not trying to predict the future.
It feels like these continuous episodes of The Simpsons. You're like, can you please stop?
Well, I was like, I hope it doesn't, because it had like I was talking to Cindy Pon who wrote um Want, and like her dystopia future is like air is the precious resource, and so people have to wear like gas masks and stuff.
Mhm.
And then you know masking during the pandemic became a thing, and then not just because of air quality, but and but part of it is also like climate change, and air quality is a significant challenge that people are facing. But I think science fiction authors in general are taking inspiration from things that are real and or maybe about to become real. And so it
Mhm.
has a, I don't know, it was hard in having written Sidekick and this entire series I wrote, Not Your Sidekick, Not Your Backup, Not Your Villain, all together in um during, or Sidekick was written um earlier, so it came out in 2016 and then he was elected. Um and then I it definitely changed it because I'm writing as I go, right? So a lot of my feelings about like giving more weight, I think, to these kids fighting and being part of this resistance effort. And like it was hard. I think I met with a group of authors who were like, why do this? What's the point? Why is why am I not like, is my work still important during this time, right? There are people out there doing work to like help other people. And I think what was helpful, especially during the pandemic too, was like art saved a lot of people. Like having, how many people like binged everything? How many people started reading everything because we could not go out, we could not see people in person, but we could still like have like online communities, we could still read
Mhm.
books, we could still watch TV and books and films and stuff. And so a lot of that empowerment and comfort too, I think, was found in media. And I think about my work, and if my books comfort one person, if they inspire one person, if someone finds joy and laughs and smiles, then that would have been, um, that's worth it, right?
Yeah,
That's why I write.
absolutely. So over the years, how has your writing style changed, or has it not? I don't know if people even know what that is anymore at this point.
Do you need 1 million billion?
$1 million.
um it has changed, I think, in the sense that like as the projects that I've worked on have been, they've been in different genres and for different age groups, I've kind of adapted or brought different conventions from that genre to my
Mhm.
work. But I feel like I'm also discovering more about who I am as a writer with each book. And so I think the more that I write, the more that I know myself and my writing, and that brings my voice a lot more to the page. I think when like you can even see like the difference between like Not Your Sidekick and Not Your Backup, right? That's like 3 to 4 years of difference in work, and also getting to know the characters better.
Mhm.
I think my skill in storytelling has definitely improved, and I think also like um, the capacity to handle certain issues. Like definitely in the Sidekick Squad series, it's very much like the parents are super supportive. It is a fantasy in which I wanted, like the conflict of the books is like, this like corrupt government and the superpower shenanigans and the robots, and like, I didn't want any of the kids ever to face bullying. I didn't want the trans kid to ever have to struggle with um, you know, big big issues of like his parents not accepting him or anything like
Mhm.
that. And like the conflict of the books is not about being queer. It's the conflict is, the adventure, the shenanigans. And so um dealing with, I think, more complicated issues of like um relationship with parents and being queer, maybe to the extreme in Clash of Steel, because that was a very specific story
Mhm.
with a specific villain. Uh, I think I'm approaching, like, when you first start writing, there is like a story of your heart that you want to tell, but you might not have the capacity to tell it yet, right?
Mhm.
So as I'm learning more and developing more skills, I think I'm more capable of telling stories that I couldn't tell when I first started writing, like being more myself and being more comfortable with my like agender non-binary feels, and being able to approach like, okay, like I might want to write and maybe I feel comfortable writing when I haven't been able to write before. And yeah, I think my writing style has become more broad where I'm more comfortable writing like funny things or I don't know, when people tell me my books are funny, I'm like, really? I don't know. Am I funny? I don't think I'm a funny person. I guess with the power of editing, I can think of some good jokes.
There you
Um,
go.
there's a joke in Not Your Backup that I wrote actually while I was writing Not Your Sidekick. And I actually like we had to cut it, then we had to cut it in Not Your Villain. And I was just like, this is what I've envisioned putting in the book for like ages. And it's just a book, it's just a joke when like Emma's looking for one of her moms and she's like, Mom! And then one mom shows up, she's like, no, not that mom.
Wrong mom.
And it's really silly, but I just really wanted to have it because it's like, a scene. There are specific scenes that I think of, and I know many writers do this well as well, where you're like, this is the scene that inspired why I wanted to write this project in the first place. So like, okay, envisioned this really cool scene. All right, now I have
Mhm.
characters and all this stuff to do this scene in the first place. But yes, definitely, I think my writing has changed, and I'm excited to see how it continues to change. I think any artist will go through phases and learn more, and I'm constantly aware that I'm a work in progress. So getting to see that develop will be interesting.
I can't wait to see it too.
Thanks.
Um, so what if do you have a favorite child? What is your favorite book? What was your favorite book to write? More so to the point.
Um, I I have one current actual child who I love. Um, But when parents are like, oh, I have multiple, like parents have more than one child, and someone's like, do you have a favorite? And they're like, no, I love all my children equally.
Mhm.
And obviously, there's the trope of like writers who are like, do you love all your books equally? Um, it's really hard because they're all so different,
Yeah.
and I love all of them. I've loved working on them, um, and it's a fun question because I think my favorite has almost always been what I'm currently working on, but there's always a like vibe, right, of like, oh, this book has a special place in my heart because it was my first book, or this one is the one where we introduce like Jess, and like the sidekick squad is always really special to me. And like it was really fun and exciting to like write a Star Wars piece and like, oh yes, now we have, here are some more gays for your Star Wars.
And
uh,
Star Wars can always be gayer. It's fine.
yeah, just continue to have more gays. I think that I was talking to Marco Shiro about our short stories for
Mhm.
that um Empire Strikes Back, and the editors too, and they were just like, oh yeah, it just happened to be like this was the most queer um from a certain point of view, but it was fun. It was great. I loved being in a Star Wars. And yeah, this do I have a favorite? I think it's going to be like, right now I'm excited about Coffee Shop, but I feel like because it was such a unique situation, because Clash of Steel came out during the pandemic, so
Mhm.
I haven't gotten to talk to people about it. I haven't done a ton of events for it, and so being able to talk about people with it, and it was my first historical novel, so I'm still very much in like celebrating Clash of Steel moment, because I put so much work into it, and I'm really proud of it as a novel, and how um how it came out, and
Mhm.
like the final story, because I struggled with a lot with it. And so it's kind of like that feel of like, oh, I worked really hard to like race this marathon and did all this training, and you get to the end, and it feels really good. But I'm really excited about Coffee Shop because it's what I'm currently working on. And then, well, I guess we're in a different stage now since it's going to come out soon, and it's technically done. We're just at the time of when this interview is out. The, I don't know. This can be evergreen. I don't know. It can't because it's gonna be dated. I don't know. It is it is it is done, but it needs they're like at this stage arcs aren't out yet because it still needs like final edits and
Yeah.
all this other stuff. So like it's interesting seeing people rate it on Goodreads. Not that like I should not look at Goodreads because like, but every author has been told like, don't look at the comments, don't look at Goodreads. But someone told me about it, and I was like, you literally put this in my face. But sure, thank you. But people are on, and like it's exciting, right? Because people are like adding it to to read TBRs.
Hmm.
But I'm like, no one has read it. How are you reading it? I don't understand. But okay, have fun.
It's so interesting. We're gonna sidestep into that real quick. I will see people when I know that like arcs aren't out and like the only copies are the quote unquote for your consideration copies. Like those are the ones that I'm like that I know that authors are getting for blurbs. Um, that those are the only copies out, like the proofs that they're getting from the actual publisher. And I'm like, what are you doing leaving a review? Or they'll be like 5 stars. I'm so excited. And I'm like, what are you doing? Or like 1 star, this book may have lesbians in it. And I'm like, that's 5 stars to me, bro. I don't know.
It better have lesbians in
Like, I'm
it.
not reading if it doesn't have queers in it, buddy. So like that's like I fully have gotten off Goodreads. This year I completely deleted my account. I'm now only on Storygraph and Fable.
I don't even know
So
what those
okay, we're gonna talk after this.
are.
But I digress. Um, so do you have a top read this year? Not other than your own books.
um, I think there's just a lot of books that I'm excited to read
Okay.
because I've started doing events again. Obviously, I'm in a lot of bookstores, and when I'm in the bookstore, I have no filter, so I just buy tons of books. Uh, and I'm like, oh, cool! I'm in a brand new indie bookshop. I'm just gonna um, read, and I'm excited, right? And I'm here talking to people.
Hmm.
I really loved "I'll Be Gone for Christmas," and it's a remix of "The Holiday." And the queer love story is beautiful. It's it feels really like soft and comforting, like a warm blanket and a mug of hot chocolate. And it has a lot of like, I think, like, one of the main characters is dealing with grief and the loss of a parent. And it's really beautiful in how it handles like obviously the romance is there's two characters, right? So it's not two characters in romance with each other. They switch houses and then they each have a romance with someone else in that town. Um, and so I think it's a really lovely holiday book. I also really adored Dahlia Adler's. She had two books that I read recently. I'm gonna blank on the name.
Cool
But
for
we
the summer.
no, I read that when that came out. But I also love that. That was great.
Hold
It's
on.
the one with the one with the football player and the cheerleader.
Home
Home.
field advantage and going by
Yes.
coastal. Sorry, they're literally saying.
Yeah, I just loved I love all of Dahlia's works, but like it's just so fun, right? And it's also like when you think like, okay, these are like fun like tropes like football player, cheerleader, it's like gonna be like
Hmm.
romance, but it's just so good, right? And it's about
Hmm.
like these depth of these characters experiencing like friendship dynamics and being queer and like falling in love and um and Dahlia's work always to me has that like beautiful depth of um character and that like sweet fluffy like romance, but also like cool for the summer is I don't know, I cried reading it. And so yeah, love Dahlia's books. I've read a bunch of different adult romances too, that were really lovely. Blanking. Nope. I'll come back to that. I was like, wait, yeah, I'll be gone for Christmas is adult. Um, and I read like Julie Tu's. That's the most recent book I read. So Julie Tu and her Fancy Meeting You Here was super cute. I just love. Um, it feels very like I grew up in San Gabriel Valley in SoCal, so it was just so specific to like all the references, like this street and this particular dim sum restaurant. And the wedding's gonna be here, and like it feels very like the diaspora culture of like specifically like the SGV, if folks don't know, is a um I don't know if you have a sociology textbook, it's in there with like ethnoburbs where it's just where a bunch of like different immigrant communities, like so you have a lot of Chinese people, Vietnamese people, Taiwanese people, um and it's where I grew up, so it feels like home. It feels it really resonates to like her writing is just like, hey, like have these like fluffy romances with like Asian American characters, and you know, they go like the family dynamics are like spot on. Oh, I read Dal A for Auntie.
Nice.
uh, uh, I um, and the Heart Principle, that was lovely. Um, Top reads this year. I think it's just gonna be ever evolving. Oh, I have Prince of the Palisades, Prince of the Palisades. Uh, and hmm, books. This is the question that you're all people are like, what favorite things? And I'm like, oh, brain empty. Never read a book ever. I don't know.
I've never read, I don't know how to read. Don't ask me this question. Um, we don't have to talk about books anymore, but do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
Yeah, I would say keep writing, keep reading, read in every single genre that you can, because it's not just like if you know you want to write YA, don't just read YA. Read in adult, read in romance, read in mystery, read everything you can, because every genre brings something different, right? And you're going to learn
Mhm.
something different. Like I learned a lot about character reading mystery novels, because it's all you know, you have the way the pacing is different, the way things are revealed are different. Horror is a really interesting genre convention that I don't think a lot of people look at as terms of like learning structure.
Yeah.
Reading romance novels, if you're not a romance writer, romance does such a great job of developing relationships and specific like conflict and resolution that I think are super helpful. And also just write and know that like nothing you do is wasted. um People are like, well, if I'm not writing the novel of my heart, why should I write? Or like, what, how is this going to help me? It's like, you're not going to a pianist who's playing scales, those are not wasted, you know,
Mhm.
even if you're not working on your piece. And like it everything that you write is going to build your capacity to write more. And so like people are like, oh, like fanfic is real writing, but like if it brings you joy, do it. And it's going to be do whatever you want. Write fanfic of your own original characters. You want write fic of whatever you're excited about. You're excited.
No, I'm baffled at people who say that because have they not seen how many fanfics have been picked up as romance novels and fantasy novels right now?
Oh, is that the thing right now? Sure. I mean, it has
That,
been, sure, slowly, but like
yeah, that is
it's
the
great. I'm
massive trend
excited that
right now.
people. It's so funny because in 2015, it was such a like people were very tight-lipped about having come from fandom, and
Hmm.
there was a huge movement, I think, about people who are like, hey, you just filed off the serial numbers of your fic and, you know, changed the characters' names and then you published it. That's not real writing. And um, for those fics, like having known people who've done that and not done that specifically, that's the accusation that people are like, I'm like, no, reading the fic and reading the finished novel is completely different because they've
Hmm.
done so much work into creating it as a standalone. And maybe it was already a beautiful stand. Like a lot of novels that I think have come from people who started in fandom or maybe started this beautiful AU that like someone took an incredible world building sci-fi concept and then we're like, I'm going to write this 200K piece about in this like I'm writing this epic space opera or whatever it is, and like, you know, I'm using characters from the show, but that setting, that world, what you did to those characters to be in that world, you are essentially remaking like the characters in, you know, that you're putting in an AU. Whenever you put someone in AU, the events that happened to create who they were as that person are changing. So if you're like, oh, this traumatic thing to you didn't happen, okay,
Hmm.
that's a different person who didn't experience that. Obviously, if you're a fanfic reader, you're like, oh yes, this is so interesting. Now that my blurbo has no longer experienced the trauma, how did that change their personality? How did that change their capacity to handle whatever? So I think it's really interesting. I definitely like I support anyone who wants to read fic. I support anyone who wants to read fic that has been turned into novels. I'm excited that like authors are publishing their fic. Um, I don't know. I just think the more access to stories we have, the better.
Hmm. I
And the more
agree.
people can tell their stories. And like it's really fun that like you're telling me that like, oh, a lot of like that's the thing now that a lot of fantasy novels and etc. are
Mhm.
coming directly from fanfic. And I'm like, oh, great, excited.
Yeah. And the last question I like to ask, my kookiest question is, what is the weirdest thing you've had to Google while researching for your books?
I had to figure out how to describe underwear in Clash of Steel, and I was beside myself because I was determined to find out what the word was and what the garment was called and how to write it. Like it, okay, I was like, if this is this specific garment, it would have been in Mandarin. Okay, how do I translate that? Like, is it the same? Like, and like it was specifically like I was trying to figure out like a bra type situation. Like, was
Hmm.
like what did they wear during this time? How was it worn? Who would have had access to it? In like what? How expensive was it? Who what do people wear different? Like if you're a fishing person, if you're a pirate, if you live in the Forbidden City and are a courtier. So yes, I went on a very long research spiral about underwear in the 1800s in China. And
Someone in the FBI is like,
yes, my personal FBI agent is always perplexed I'm because of my Google choices.
for sure.
Yeah.
I do love that for you, though.
Thank you. I think Clash of Steel in general was something that I did so much research on, and it was so extra. Just like for fun, there was this academic journal, an article in a journal that I was reading because I was like, okay, how many of these pirates were queer? And this was not an article about queer pirates, but it was like a general article about like how many pirates that she had, and like it was about a specific battle. Or,
Mhm.
anyways, I'm reading it. I'm doing a very close read because I'm trying to get as many facts as possible. And then there was a line about like the men on these ships, and it was such a funny like the author of this, it was like a transcript of like a British person who was studying the pirates, and he wrote um yeah, it seemed like the men didn't have any problem missing the company of women.
They wouldn't, would they? And I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and a lot of I and reading other articles and stuff about like piracy at the time is that like it was a place that you could go, that if you were queer, like it was totally acceptable, right? Like you could
Yeah.
literally, and it was beautiful because there's bits in the book where I like reference actual things that happened in on pirate ships where like men would marry other men and be like, this is my spouse. If I die, he will get all of my treasure. And like it was a place where um obviously it was outside the laws of like countries because you're on your own ship. You can define your own rules, you make your own destiny. And so a lot of people were like more free to be themselves. And that's part of the like, the lure of, I think, the mythos of piracy in general, even though the concept, like, unpacking the concept itself, like, oh yes, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of um negative stuff and like oppression and conflict that comes in, but I think there's a lot of unpacking about that I did about thinking about piracy in general, about like why are there pirates in general, what sort of country creates a situation where people have to become pirates in order to survive.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I was the right person to do this interview. I have Star Wars in the background. I have pirates in the I have pretty much like, what you've written about in the background.
Excellent, excellent.
So thank you, CB, so much for coming and joining me today to do this interview. I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait for everyone to read your books.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and I hope you have a great day.
You too.